Okay, now I think we're ready to go. Few odds and ends we had to take care of there on the technical side, get things worked out and make sure they are actually working. It looks like our audio is plugged in. It looks like our video is rolling. And this is the Panther-Lair Show here on May 25th, 2021 as we go live on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check our levels. Make sure everything's not too loud, not too quiet. Make sure you can hear me just fine. It's a Tuesday night. As always, we're back after a week off. Appreciate everybody being understanding there. We had took a little vacation. Every now and then you need one of those. So we were gone for the week. Went to Florida. Spent a week on the Gulf Coast of Florida. It was very nice. Family had a great time. We had a great time. And now we're back. And surprisingly, there wasn't any big news that went down while I was gone. It tends to happen a lot that there's something comes up while when I go on vacation. It's almost to the point where it's kind of a joke among the readers on Panther-Lair.com. Chris is going out of town. Oh, here it comes. Something big is going to happen. Something's going to go down. But it didn't. It's sort of the classic story, and I think I tell this story every year when I go on vacation. But it's one of my favorites, and so I always bring it up again. 11 years ago. 11 years ago this summer, went on my honeymoon, right? And we go to Aruba. And I apologize if you've heard this story before, and if you've listened to the podcast before, you've certainly heard the story before. We go to Aruba on our honeymoon, right? It's July 2010. It's beautiful. I mean, the place is just amazing. We want to go back again sometime soon. And it's my honeymoon, right? I mean, you're going to do this once, hopefully. You're only going to do this once. I put my phone in the safe. I didn't even bring my laptop. And I mean, this is 2010, so it's not like I get online with my phone anyway. But I didn't want to be bothered. I didn't want to be disturbed. I just wanted to spend the whole week enjoying life, And so I do it. So I put everything away. I don't log on. I don't check messages. I don't look at emails, anything like that. Midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere around there. There was not even a business center, right? That's what they call them in like hotels, right? It's a business center. We were in a resort in Aruba, and there's a business center. So I'm like, all right, we're just hanging out, sitting around, doing nothing. I'm going to go in, just take a look. I'm just going to take a look and see what's going on. Now, I left the site in the capable hands of Josh Sickles. The last time I told this story, Josh reached out and said he was happy. He thought it was funny that I told this story. So if Josh is listening again, credit again to Josh. He did a great job holding it down on the site, had everything running smoothly, taken care of. And so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go look, just see what's been going on. We're all just, we're very relaxed. It's a very nice weekend, or a very nice week. I'm just going to take a look at the front page of the site, maybe peek the message boards, just see what's happening. It's no big deal. I'm just going to check it out. So I sit down, get all set up, logged in, remember my password. And I was dealing with this before the show started, trying to remember my password on another device. So I'm trying to remember my password to the site. Get logged in. Finally, I don't know if it was a dial-up connection. It was 2010. It very well may have been. It was 2010 in Aruba. They very well may have had a dial-up connection at that point. Get all logged in, waiting for the site to open and open up, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. Opens up in the front page, the very first thing, July of 2010. The very first thing I see is a big picture of Jabal Sheard and a headline, Sheard arrested. Click, X out, log off, back to the beach. I just said, I want nothing to do with this. I'm on my honeymoon. I'm not going to pay attention. And that's my classic news always breaks when I'm away story. There have been a lot of other things since then. There have been a lot of recruits committing. This is what happens when you go to the Outer Banks in June. Recruits always tend to commit while you're on vacation, but the rest of your family wants to go in June. So you go in June with the understanding that you're going to be reporting on recruiting while you're there, probably sitting at the poolside getting, on the phone. Hey, what made you commit to Pitt? So that's part of it, but not this time. This time we got away free and clear. No major news out of the last week. Credit to Jim Hammett. He did a great job keeping things going on the site while I was gone. And, I appreciate everybody who hung out on the message boards and talked about Pitt sports in lieu of my own contributions. Although, every morning, wake up early, get a cup of coffee, poke around on the site. Wasn't completely torn away, but I didn't have the podcast, obviously. So I missed you guys. Glad to see everybody rolling in and getting set here. Already comments and questions pouring in on the live stream. If you have a question, comment about Pitt sports, that's the place to do it. Right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can post your comment or question. We'll have that conversation. It's Tuesday night, like I said, on May 25th. I always do these podcasts on Tuesday night, but this particular Tuesday night, we've got the second screen set up over here. I'm looking right at our main screen as we record the podcast, but on the second screen, we've got the Pitt, North Carolina baseball game going. Opening round game. I don't know if you call it an opening round game. Opening game of pool play. In the ACC baseball tournament, Panthers taking on North Carolina. As we sit here right now, it is there's the inning. They weren't showing the inning when I said it. It was top of the fifth. Pitt is leading North Carolina 1-0. So it's a close one. Mitch Meyer's pitching well for the Panthers so far, and this is must win. For Pitt, it really is. Panthers were doing well through midseason. One of the surprise stories in the ACC and maybe college baseball, and they're picked to finish last in the conference preseason, and they ended up being one of the best teams in the league really going through mid-season. And they had an extended COVID pause where they had to sit out for 2 weeks, couldn't play. And they came back and did okay right off the bat, but then final two series of the season, they got swept by NC State and swept by Wake Forest. And that really sunk them. And they entered the postseason on a 7-game losing streak. They enter as a number 10 seed in the ACC baseball tournament. And, broken down, they take 12 teams into the tournament. They break them down into 4 pools of 3. And if you're the low man, and so they play, everybody plays everybody else in their pool. Pitt is in a pool with North Carolina, who they're playing tonight, as well as NC State. Carolina and NC State will play Pitt will play NC State on Thursday, I think, and Carolina and NC State play on Friday. If 2 teams come out of the pool tied, if they're both 1-1, then the higher seed team goes to the semifinals on Saturday, So if you're the low man, like Pitt is, as the number 10 seed, the lowest seed in this pool with Carolina and NC State, you got to win both games or you're not getting into the semifinal of the baseball tournament. Pitt, I think D1Baseball.com put out their NCAA postseason projection, the bracketology for baseball, and Pitt was one of the last 5 in, I think is what it was. So maybe the Panthers are still right there on the cusp, but they're really in a situation where the more you win, the better. And if you can make it to the semifinals, you're going to give yourself a much better chance of making the big tournament. And certainly, if you make it to the finals or win the ACC tournament, you're gonna lock yourself in there. So these games right now are all must win for Pitt. Panthers clinging to a 1-0 lead in the top of the fifth. They got a guy at third right now. So this thing is, there's an opportunity to add a couple more on. We'll keep an eye on that. We're not going to do play-by-play on the Pitt baseball team during the podcast, but it's happening right now. So we'll talk about it. We'll keep an eye on it and see what's been going on. I want to jump into some of the comments and questions here. We're going to talk some Pitt football tonight, and over-under came out, and I want to talk about that and some other thoughts that I've got on the team right now. But I want to start off with some of the comments. Michael B., who's one of our regular super chatters, jumped in right off the bat, and we appreciate him. If you want to be a super chatter, you can contribute to the podcast, and we appreciate for sure any support you've got. Because we like doing this podcast, but like I say, we appreciate any support. So Michael B. says, Chris, welcome back. First question, will the Penguins win tomorrow night? And secondly, what do you consider a successful season for Pitt football? With Kenny Pickett back, I think winning a minimum of 8+, a bowl game is a must. As far as the Penguins, I don't know what to tell you. I thought they were going to win last night. So I'm glad I didn't run into my neighbor today, because I saw my neighbor on Monday afternoon. He had a Crosby jersey on, and I said, hey man, they're gonna win tonight. They're gonna bounce back, feel great about them. And obviously that didn't go their way on Monday night, so I'm not gonna make any predictions in that regard. My predictions are wrong about Pitt on a pretty consistent basis. I have a high percentage chance of getting predictions wrong when it comes to Pitt, and that's the team that I cover and watch and pay attention to and think about all the time. So I really am not reliable when it comes to predictions about teams that I don't cover and focus on as much as I focus on Pitt. As it relates to the football team, it's interesting you asked that question, Michael B., about what constitutes a successful season for Pitt in 2021, because this is something that I've given a lot of thought to and I think a lot about. And we talked about it in recent weeks and really throughout the offseason. I think, in any year, you've got to be shooting for a minimum of 8 wins in the regular season. And I think that has to be the minimum. And you're not always going to get there. There's going to be a season here or there where things don't go your way, where the ball bounces the wrong way, or you have injuries, or just doesn't work out, and maybe you win 7. You should never really dip below 7, maybe 6 on the off chance, and never in consecutive years. I think that's a comfortable bar for where Pitt should be on a regular basis. 8 is a minimum, and I think that's probably should be the case for Pitt this year. I broke down the schedule a few weeks ago, and I've done this from time to time, and it's largely the same sort of schedule breakdown in any given season. That I think 12-game schedule really breaks down to kind of 3 sections of 4. You've got your 4 non-conference games. You've got the 4 sort of, I call them should-win conference games: Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Duke, and Virginia. I know Pitt lost to Virginia in 2019. I know they lost to Syracuse and Georgia Tech in 2017. Since Pat Narduzzi, and just talking in the Narduzzi era, obviously Pitt didn't beat Georgia Tech in 2013 or 2014 after joining the ACC. They lost to Syracuse in there as well in 2000. I want to say 13, or maybe it was 2012. Pitt just scored. Pitt just scored a run on a pass ball. That's a rough way for Carolina to give one up, but Pitt now leads 2-0, so we're keeping an eye on that. That's pretty big for the Panthers to add another run in there. Anyway, under Pat Narduzzi, Pitt has lost to Syracuse once, they've lost to Georgia Tech once, and they've lost to Virginia once. They never lost to Duke. When they lost to Virginia, it was 2019 when Virginia went on to win the Coastal Division. When they lost to Georgia Tech and Syracuse, it was 2017, which was Pitt's worst season under Narduzzi, without a question. And Pitt just added on another run on a sacrifice fly. So it's now 3-0 Panthers in the top of the 5th. Huge runs to add on there. Huge insurance runs to add on and give the Panthers a great chance of winning a must-win game. So those 4 games, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Duke, Pitt should probably win all 4 every year. Maybe over a 4-year or 5-year cycle, maybe you have 1 or 2 losses against those teams. But year in, year out, you should pretty consistently beat all 4 of those, because Pitt has pretty consistently beaten all 4 of those. 2015, 2016, 2018, they've beat all 4 of those teams. In 2020, they only played 2 of them. They only played Syracuse and Georgia Tech, and they beat them. You shouldn't really have many losses pile up there. So you get your 4 non-conference games, and you have your 4 probably should-win conference games. And in a normal year, where you have your sort of standard 4-game non-conference schedule that's not ridiculous and absurd, like we've talked about what Pitt has been playing over the, since Pat Narduzzi got here. 2015, they play Iowa and Notre Dame. 2016, they play Penn State and Oklahoma State. They do that again in 2017. 2018, they get Penn State and Notre Dame, and they get UCF just for fun thrown in on top. In 2019, they have Penn State. They have UCF again. Not those kinds of schedules. More like this year with an FCS. Plus, what is it? Is it Richmond? I think Richmond, UMass, and drawing a blank on the other one, but it's an FBS and non-Power 5 school that you should probably win, and then Tennessee, which is the challenging game. You're going on the road to an SEC conference, going on the road to an SEC school, and that's going to be challenging, but you also, you're catching Tennessee at the point where you want to catch Tennessee. If you have to go on the road and play in Knoxville, you want to catch them this year. This is the year to do it. Or last year, that would have worked too. You should win all 4 of those. And you should win all 4 of those should-win games in the conference of Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Duke, and Virginia. Right there, you should have 8 wins built in. And, if you've listened to this podcast, like I say, really in recent episodes, the last month or so, I've talked about this a couple times. And I've talked about it a few months ago, and I talked about it a few months before that, and and so on and so forth. Since I sort of put these numbers together over the last year or two of what's a reasonable expectation for Pitt, I think you've got 8 wins right there that you should be able to start with. You should be able to start with those 8 wins, and then Carolina, Miami, Virginia Tech, and your other, Atlantic Division opponent, in this case Clemson this year, those games become, kind of gravy or cherry on top type of games, where if you can win one of those, it gets you to 9. If you can win 2 of those, it gets you to 10. You understand what I'm saying? You don't want to be in a position like, 2016 is kind of a rough example because of the non-conference schedule that they played, but you don't want to be in a position where you have to beat Clemson just to get to 8 wins. You don't want to be in a position where you have to beat Virginia Tech just to get to 8 wins. When you blow games against, if you blow games against Syracuse, if you blow games against Georgia Tech or Duke or Virginia, or if you overschedule the non-conference and put losses into that section, now you need to beat Miami to get to 8 wins. You need to beat Carolina. You need to beat Virginia Tech. You need to beat, your other Atlantic Division opponent, in this case, Clemson, just to get to 8 wins. You want those games to be the ones that decide if you win 9 or you win 10 or more, right? So, yeah, I think in a year like this, 8 is the minimum. I think you need to get to 8 wins in the regular season, not 7 plus a bowl win, 8. Because if you fall short of 8, that means you blew an opportunity somewhere. That means you lost to one of those 4 non-conference teams, or you lost to Duke, Virginia, Georgia Tech, or Syracuse. And pretty much any of those, aside from maybe Tennessee, just on the pure virtue of the fact that it's a road trip to the SEC, that might be the only possible defensible loss out of those 8 games that we're talking about. And Bart Simpson chimes in with a comment, said there's no chance Pitt wins at Tennessee because that's what we do. I don't really know where... I don't know what would be the sort of analogous situation for Pitt's road trip to Tennessee. They haven't won a road game against a Power 5 opponent since like 2008, right? When they beat Notre Dame in South Bend. I think before that it was the 2002 or 3 the Texas A&M game that they won down there. So it's been a long time since Pitt has won a road non-conference Power 5 game. But they also haven't, I don't think they've faced a non-conference Power 5 team that was sort of in the position that Tennessee is this year. Tennessee seems to be ripe for the picking. You know what I mean? When they went to Oklahoma State was really good. When they've gone to Notre Dame in 2018, or when they went out there in 2012, those were really good Notre Dame teams. 2010, I'd have to go back and look and see what was going on in 2010. But they haven't. I don't think you could find comparable situations. Iowa, when they went to Iowa in 2015, we didn't think much of that loss at the beginning of the year when it happened. But Iowa ended up being a really good team that year. And Pitt needed. Iowa ended up being really good, and they needed like a 65-yard field goal to beat Pitt. Or to at least keep the game from going to overtime. So I don't know if there's really a good comparison for this Tennessee game to say this is what Pitt does. Well, when they've gone on the road for the most part against Power 5 non-conference opponents, they've been facing pretty good teams and sometimes even really good teams. This team doesn't look like it's all that great, and they're in a transition to a brand new head coach coming off a season where they really struggled. It's a road trip to the SEC. It's not going to be easy, and I'm not claiming it's going to be easy. I guess maybe 2005 Nebraska was probably not a very good team, but that was also Dave Wanstead's first year. He was still figuring out how the whole thing worked. But you understand my point, though. I don't think there's a good comparison for this Tennessee game, and I don't think you can really look at Pitt's history and say, well, they do this or they do that against in these kinds of games. So. I think they should go into it with that expectation. I think they should go into it with the expectation of winning that game. Just like they should all 8 of those games that I'm talking about, so that when they play Virginia Tech, when they play Miami, when they play Carolina, when they play Clemson, they're really playing for something. They're really playing for the possibility of turning a good season, which I think 8 wins would be good, turning a good season into something better than that. Something potentially special. And that's how you want it to be. You want those big games, those tough games, those challenging games to be the ones that can really put you over the top. And I think that's the opportunity that Pitt is going to have this year, that they should have if everything goes according to plan. Anthony Tennyson chimes in on the live chat. What's up, Chris? Happy Tuesday. There's a lot of football talent coming in June. It looks like we might get a nice run of commitments like the past few years. Yeah, I would think so. There's two sides to what you said there, Tony, there is a lot of good talent coming in June. It's going to start on June 1st. June 1st is the first day that recruits can go on visits, that coaches can host them on college campuses for visits. The first day since the first week of March 2020. So we're looking at about 15 months since recruits have been able to go out and visit schools and see them in person. And coaches have been able to have in-person contact and interaction with recruits. It's been a long time. And I think coaches are really excited to get June started. I think recruits are really excited to get June started. And June 1st is shaping up to be a big one for Pitt. We had an article actually today on Panther-Lair.com. You should go check it out. Some of the best prospects in Western Pennsylvania across the classes. 2022 guys who are going to be seniors in the fall, 23 guys who are going to be in juniors in the fall, the 2024 guys who are going to be sophomores in the fall. Some of the best guys in all 3 of those classes are going to be at Pitt on June 1st, the very first day of visits, and they've got them coming in. You're talking about Tyrese Fearbury, a 4-star defensive end prospect at Perry in the 2022 class. He's going to be there. Tamir Robinson, a big-time offensive line prospect in the 23 class, is going to be there. Rodney Gallagher, a big-time wide receiver, athlete, defensive back in the 2023 class. A big-time basketball prospect in the 23 class. He's going to be there. A couple guys in the 2024 class. Lamont Payne is another one from Char Valley, a cornerback in the 23 class, big-time prospect. He's going to be there. And some of the 2024 guys, Anthony Specca, and I apologize if it's Spica, I don't want to mispronounce the name there, but he's a big-time linebacker from Central Catholic. Quentin Martin is a big-time athlete at Bell Vernon. Those 2 guys are national recruits in the 2024 class. They already have national offers, and they're going to get even more. And on the very first day, they can take visits as prospective student athletes. They're going to Pitt next week, June 1st. What is that? Next Tuesday, actually. Ooh, it's going to be tough because we're going to those guys are going to all be on campus throughout the day on next Tuesday, or in the evening or sometime, I guess. I'm going to be trying to do a podcast at 8:30. Might be needing to get on the phone just to track them down for reactions and comments and all that stuff. So we'll have to figure out a process on that. But anyway, it's going to be a big day. And then a couple days later, Pitt's going to start hosting official visits for the first time since June 2019. And you know how that goes. Official visits are a huge part of the recruiting process. Official visits are when coaches basically foot the bill and bring recruits in, fly them in, pay for their flight, pay for their hotel, pay for their food for a 48-hour stay where you wine them and you dine. You don't wine them, but you know what I mean. Proverbially speaking, you wine them and dine them. You roll out the red carpet and you try and show exactly why it's such a great experience at your school. It's a huge part of the recruiting process. And last year's recruiting class didn't get a chance to take a single official visit. This year, it's on. And Pitt is loading up every weekend in the month of June with a bunch of guys from all over the country. Because this is the chance with these official visits. Like I said, you pay for the flight. The schools pay for the flight. On an unofficial visit, the player, the prospect, the recruit is responsible for getting himself to campus and paying for his travel and lodging or whatever it is. The official visit, you pay to get those guys out to see you. You pay to put them up. And so you can bring kids in from California. You can bring kids in from Florida. You can bring kids in from Texas who might not come and visit you otherwise. And so it's a huge part of the recruiting process. And this may be the only time some of these guys get on campus. So you make sure it's an amazing experience. And that's what official visits are all about. It used to be they were only in December and January, but now we added this June official visit period for the last few years, and the result has been an explosion of commitments. I remember a few years ago, it was the Father's Day Massacre. Pick out like 7 commitments in one day. It was absurd. And it was on Father's Day. It was a ridiculous, like I say, explosion of commitments. I don't know if the numbers are going to be as high this year. This year's a little bit unique because of the scholarship situation, where the NCAA said you have these super seniors, right? So guys who were on the team in 2020 affected by COVID, they get a free year of eligibility so they can come back. All right, that's cool, but it's going to create a scholarship crunch down the road because everybody who was on the team gets that extra year to come back, which means you still, in 2021, like this coming season, the guys who decide to come back and use that extra free year, whether it's Chase Pine or Kenny Pickett or Phil Campbell, or a handful of other guys. I forget everybody who chose to do it. There's a John Patrician's coming back, Lucas Krull. Those guys don't count against your 85-man scholarship limit. But the next year, you do have to be back to 85. And anybody who's currently juniors or currently seniors who have that free year that they want to use in 2022, they're going to count against your 85-man scholarship limit. So you're going to be in a scholarship crunch. And because of that, coaches are going to have to be really selective about the commitments that they take. Pitt has taken 3 already. I'm a little surprised that the number's even that high because they have to be selective because they don't know how many spots they're really going to have to work with. So I think there's going to be a June rush of commitments. There always is. I don't know if the numbers are going to be quite what they were in previous years, the last few years, just because I think Pitt has to be careful. They have to be careful with how many commitments they take because they don't have an infinite supply of scholarships to give, and they actually have less than they normally would and more uncertainty about how many they should have this year. So it's going to be interesting to watch in June. There's going to be a lot to talk about. There's going to be a lot to write about and read about and report on and focus on. But we'll see how this works out. They're definitely going to have a lot of recruits on campus for visits, though. So yeah, Tony, you're absolutely right. It's going to be a big year for sure, a big month for sure. Let's see here. Kevin Plaucha, one of our regulars, big supporter on Twitter, big supporter of the podcast. Before we get to his comment, Pitt clinging to a 3-0 lead with 2 men on and 2 out, 2-2 count, and a soft dribbler in the infield here in this game against North Carolina, and the bases are now loaded with 2 outs and a 3-0 lead. Whew. Getting a little tense. All right, Kevin, let's get to your comment, your question. Hey, Chris, welcome back. Thoughts on John Hughley being reinstated, and has Pitt been continuously pursuing any other big men that you know of? So, yeah, I said there was no news that happened while I was on vacation, but before I went on vacation, there was news, and it was after the last podcast, but before I went on vacation, so it was in that sort of window there, and we almost did an extra live stream about it just to... I don't think we did one, did we? No, I don't think we did. But John Hughley reinstated the team. Charges dropped from felony down to misdemeanors, and he's back on the team. And I said, from the time the season ended, I said there were 3 big questions that Pitt had to answer in the offseason. 3 things that were going to go a long way in determining what this next season would look like. One was, will Justin Champagnie come back? Or what will Justin Champagnie do? The next was, can Pitt get a big man? Can they find a big to come in who's either a freshman, a high school kid who's ready to play and contribute, or a transfer, or somebody who's a little bit older, a little bit more experienced and ready to play. But I mean, ultimately somebody who could come in and contribute right away. And then the third question is, what happens with John Hughley? So we know Justin Champagnie went to the NBA. He's not going to come back. He's going to stay in the draft and find out, pursue his fate that way, pursue his fortunes. As far as the question of getting a big man, Pitt missed out on Efton Reed. That was the primary target, certainly among the high school ranks, and we haven't really gotten a sense that they're too strong after any transfers at this point, although those things always could be sort of bubbling under the surface. And then the third question of what's going to happen with John Hughley, this is the question that was actually answered in Pitt's favor, and it was very good to get John Hughley back. I think I know Hughley, he wasn't dominant during his time as a freshman, but I think he showed enough flashes and came up with enough pedigree and had enough potential that getting him back on this roster is a huge boost for this coming season. Just keeping an eye on this here. Things are getting kind of tense with the Pitt baseball team. It's a full count now. The base is loaded, and I think my stream is probably behind. So if you've already seen what happened, don't spoil it for anyone. But as Jeff Capel has gone through this offseason, he's filled in the necessary pieces. They got a backup point guard with Jamarius Burton. You know what I mean? They brought in Dan Oladapo to be there's a fly ball to center and it drops. They got at least one run scores. Maybe just one. Brought in Dan Oladapo, got Chris Payton, and sort of secured the front court and took care of some of the forward positions. Nate Santos, as a freshman coming in, can shoot really well at the 2 or the 3. You filled in a lot of spots, but you still had this big gaping hole, this big question at the center position. And getting that secured, figuring out an option there. They scored 2 runs, actually. It's 3-2. I didn't know what they were going to do. I didn't know if they could really get an impact transfer. I thought Efton Reed was going to be the guy who, if they could get him, he would be the one who would really help shore up that position and give you a really good option there. Somebody who can make an impact this season. I didn't really have a lot of faith that they would find an impact transfer at center. I don't know. For some reason, I just didn't get the impression that it was really going to happen. John Hughley is kind of the best of sort of both worlds. He's young, but he's played some college basketball. He's got the potential to be an impact player. And all of a sudden, this big, giant question at center is no longer quite as much of a question. Myers is coming out of the game here after giving up that a 2-run single. And it's 3-2 now in the bottom of the 5th, with Pitt leading, but just barely over North Carolina. So John Hughley, I think, helps secure that spot. I think it's big to get him back. I wouldn't be surprised to see if they still try to go get another center. I think Chris Payton can work there a little bit. I mean, Dan Oladapo, if you want to play small, could play there a little bit. Noah Collier could even get some minutes there. I mean, I think with the lineup as they've currently got it, with the roster as it's currently constructed, I think they've got enough versatility and flexibility that they can do some different things. They can have some different kind of looks on the court. If they want to play small, if they want to play a little bit bigger, it's not going to be huge. I mean, even Hughley's not, he's not a 7-footer. But you can play a lot of different ways. And I think they like that versatility. I think they like being able to move around. You could have 4 guys on the court. You could have a point guard and 4 guys who are like 6'8", legitimately playing positions, that make sense on the court at one time. And so you got a lot of options. And I think that's what they like. And, you're not going to be forced into sort of desperation options at center. And that's what Hughley does for you. He takes away the need for desperation of, are you going to start Chris Payton at center all season? Is it going to be Chris Payton and Dan Oladapo rotating at center all season? It's not what you wanted in Max Madison behind those guys. It's not the situation you wanted to be in. You didn't want to have to do that. You wanted someone a little more reliable, a little more of a sure thing, and I think that's what Hughley is. I think that's what he gives them. Dan Juby, random thought: what is up with between Pitt and Duquesne and not playing the city game? Any background there? I don't have a lot of insight on that situation. I think probably from Pitt's perspective, they don't. I would guess they don't see a lot of upside in it. They'd be more interested in just getting a home game rather than going to the PPG Paints arena every year. It was the city game is the kind of thing where I always thought, boy, this is cool, because that's what we all say. Boy, this is cool. It's cool, I guess, that you can play a road game and not really leave your city. I don't know. I don't think interest rose or dropped in, I don't think interest in the sport of basketball in the city of Pittsburgh rose or dropped, depending on whether or not Pitt and Duquesne played. It's got history because we're told it's got history. I don't know. It was cool. It was interesting to me because I don't travel to a lot of Pitt basketball road games. I don't go on the road for many games. When they played West Virginia a couple years ago, I went down there for that game. And so, I mean, when you talk about road games, that would be one that I would travel to. I would go to the AJ Palumbo. You know what I mean? My other computer shut down in the middle of this inning. I would go to the AJ Palumbo, or I would go to the Robert Morris game at the Sewell Center, or whatever it is now, UPMC Fieldhouse or something like that. But I don't know. It didn't, and maybe it's because Pitt won all the time, aside from that 1 year with Kevin Stallings. It just didn't, I was never able to convince myself that it meant a whole lot for any reason other than the fact that we always say it means a whole lot. I don't know. And maybe that's just me. I didn't grow up in the city. I moved to Pittsburgh when I was, to come out here for college. So I was already like 18 years old. Maybe I missed the formative years where the city game, it really means a lot. I mean, it's cool. It's interesting. It's nice, I guess. But it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of push on either side for it to happen. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just jaded or cynical, or I don't know, whatever you want to say about it. I was thinking about the football team though. Today I had a conversation with somebody. I was talking to a guy, and he was like, what do you think? How's Pitt going to be this year? And it's a question I get all the time. and I've learned after 15 years of doing this that it's best to just say, I don't know. I mean, there've been enough years where I've said or acted like I had some idea of what Pitt was going to be or how they were going to do. And I ended up being proven dead wrong on so many occasions that I've just learned that it's best to just say, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to be. But I started, as the conversation continued, I was like, I can look at them and I can look at their schedule and this element or that element of the game, of the team. And I can say, well, this looks like they should be good. If you add all these things up, it looks like they should be in line for a successful season. But I started thinking about it more, later on throughout the day of like, actually kind of looking at the roster, right? And this was sort of spurred on even a little bit more. I forget who it was, DK Sportsbook or something like that, which is not Dejan Kovacevic's sportsbook, even though it should be. It's DK Sportsbook. I think they released an over-under of season wins, and Pitt, I think, was listed at 7. And so inevitably there's a conversation about whether you would take the over or under on that. 7... I mean, we talked a lot about the schedule earlier in the program of they should be able to get 8, minimum in the regular season out of this. But I think when you look at the team, I started thinking about, okay, if we did line the team up, if we separated them into columns of, known good, teams that are known, or elements of the team that are good, elements of the team that are bad, and then sort of the unknowns. And which way those unknowns kind of shift, or which way they kind of lean. And I started thinking about it that way, and it actually didn't help. It didn't help my confidence in the team, because when I think about, ask yourself this right now, right? You think about this team. What are the known goods? The areas of this team that are good, that are good because you've seen them play well. Position groups basically is what we're talking about. Quarterback, linebacker. What else? What else do you have? I don't know. You could maybe throw wide receiver in there on the strength of Jordan Addison, and you've seen Taysir Mack play well. But and I'm not getting into projections and potential, because there are a lot of guys on this team that I think they can be good, and I think they will be good, and I think this, and I think that. But that you have a real proven track record for. Yes, Jordan Addison, like I say, Taysir Mack has been pretty good, at different times. But I don't know if outside of the quarterback and the linebackers, there's any position group that you would say, yes, they are in the known good column. And that's a little concerning because there's like 10 position groups. And we can only come up with 2. And then that doesn't necessarily mean the other 8 are all known bad. Because I think there's only a couple in the known bad column. I think tight end is probably one in the known bad column. And I say that with the asterisk that I do think Lucas Kroll, if he stays healthy, can be an impact player in the ACC. In the offensive line, I feel like bad is harsh, but they didn't play well last year, and they didn't play well in 19, and they only did one thing well in 18, and they were bad at the other thing. They really haven't been all that good since 2016, and so it's, known bad may be a little bit harsh for the offensive line, but it's also... I can't put them in known good, and we've seen a lot of these guys, and we kind of have some idea of what they can do and who they are. I guess defensive tackle maybe would be one you would put in known good just because all those guys are back. And, I think Kalijah Cansey's pretty good. I think Devin Danielson and Tyler Bentley and David Green are pretty serviceable to good players. So maybe you would put them in the known good column. Maybe known solid, I guess, would be one. But then you got all these unknowns. Running back, defensive end, cornerback, safety, where I'm pretty sure there are talented players there. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure that those positions have good players who are going to step in and produce. I think John Morgan can be really good. I think Habakkuk Baldonado can be really good. I think Dayon Hayes can be really good. I think there's some studs out there at defensive end. But we haven't seen, I think Deslin Alexander could be a really good player. But we haven't seen them do it. You know what I mean? They haven't produced on the field. They don't have that proven track record that you can rely on. Same way with the corners. Although corners, we've seen more out of those guys, right? We saw Marquez Williams a lot. Actually, I got to rethink the cornerbacks because we saw Marquez Williams a lot last year, AJ Woods a lot last year, Rashad Battle got some time last year, Damari Mathis, we saw him the year before. So I might lean toward those guys being in the known good column. I think I'm sort of thinking that, they're just totally rebuilding the secondary this year. But the truth is they have more experience coming back this year at cornerback than they did last year. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll put the corners in known good. Safeties, not so much, though. I can't put them in the bad. I'm not going to put them in the bad because I don't think they're bad. But I'd have to put them in the uncertain because I don't know what they're going to... I don't know what they're going to be. I don't know what they're going to do. Kicker actually is another one. And that, if we're going to get into the specialists, I think Kirk Christodoulou is probably in the known good column. He's a good punter, someone you can rely on. He's a good player. The kicker is a total wild card. You don't know what he's going to be. You don't even know who it's going to be. I think Ben Sauls, maybe Jake Scarton. Who knows? Who knows who it's going to be, as a kicker, and who knows what they're going to do. So, and Anthony Tennyson jumps in and says, the football team is riding on potential this year. You're right about that. And I think that's the thing. So, I look at it, and I look at wide receiver, and I said, I don't know if I could put them in the known good or the known bad. Jordan Addison's really good. Taysier Mack is pretty good. Shockey Jacques Louise had his moments. Jared Wayne has had his moments. Trey Tipton's around again. And I really like the potential of Jalen Barden. And they brought in the transfer, Melquise Stovall. I think there's a lot of potential there. I think those guys can be really good. Same thing sort of with the running backs. There's a less proven talent, but we've seen Vincent Davis go off. We saw A.J. Davis have a 100-yard game. Izzy Abanikanda was one of the stars of the spring game. There's a lot of potential there. Those guys could be good, but we don't know yet. You know what I mean? We don't know about whether that potential is going to come together. Defensive end, I talked about it. I like the potential there. I like the potential at safety too. It's just some of these things need to come together, and that's sort of what you're banking on when you're making projections for Pitt, where they do return a decent number of starters. But there are a lot of spots that are sort of unproven. There are a lot of spots that you've got some uncertainty about. RJCman38, one of our super chatters, jumps in with a couple comments here. Pitt has tragically failed to put a decent athletic director in place the last 30 years, and the blame goes to the board. You're not going to like what I'm about to say. Steve Peterson hired Walt Harris and Ben Howland. I think you at least earn the adjective decent when you hired Walt Harris and Ben Howland. You resurrected the two major athletic programs in your university. And I know you don't like it. I know you don't want to believe it. And I know you want to, doubt it. And I know it's a hard thing for a lot of people to accept. And it's hard to overlook a lot of the sort of complicated history and some of the negatives. But, he hired Walt Harris and Ben Howland. And however he found those guys, it doesn't matter. He hired them. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You saved both of the major athletic programs with those hires. And I know you didn't like leaving Pitt Stadium. Pitt Stadium, you either could have spent the money to build the Pete, or you could have spent the money to rebuild Pitt Stadium or refurbish Pitt Stadium or fix Pitt Stadium. We could debate over and over where that money was better spent. Pitt went from having two low-end facilities to operating out of two high-end facilities. And you might not like that Heinz Field is not on campus, but it's a good facility. And they ended up with a great facility in the Peterson Event Center. Certainly at the time it was built. It probably needs to continue to be updated. They've tried to update it over the years, and they need to continue to do so. But if you weighed all the net positives and net negatives out of the move from Pitt Stadium, it probably ends up, maybe just by a slight amount, it probably ends up as a net positive. But again, you want to criticize Steve Peterson, I understand it. Walt Harris and Ben Howland are pretty strong trump cards for him to play, I think, when it comes down to it. Heather Lyke, I think, has done a pretty decent job as the athletic director. I think she's made good hires. We're sitting here on a Tuesday night in late May, kind of with our eyes glued to a second screen watching Pitt baseball, which, by the way, it's the bottom of the sixth. Pitt is still leading 3-2. Carolina's batting with 2 outs. That's her hire. She brought this coach in. She hired Jeff Capel. She hired some coaches who have been successful. And we're not going to go down the road of talking about whether Capel is a good coach or bad coach, blah, blah, blah. I think overall, again, you would find net positive when you look at the job Heather Lyke has done. RJCman38 also says college football is all about offense, and Mark Whipple has failed to break the top 100. What expectations can one reasonably have? Easy schedule, that's the benchmark for success at Pitt. Well, a lot of teams can build a lot of success on an easy schedule. I think you always look at 2018, you look at Syracuse. Pitt goes and wins the Coastal Division, but they end up going 7-7, and expectations are about as low as they could be for 2019. Syracuse plays nobody. They win 10 games, and they finish in the top 15. And, everybody thinks Syracuse is a great program and has passed Pitt by and all this stuff. You remember the message boards after the 2018 season when Pitt finished on a 3-game losing streak. Despite winning the Coastal Division, people wanted to replace Pat Narduzzi with Dino Babers because Babers and Syracuse won 10 games. But they played nobody. That's the way to do it. You get yourself into the top 20. You get yourself into the top 15 by piling up wins against nobody. That's not a bad formula for success. And you know what? As you keep piling those wins up and you keep, you post a couple 9 and 10 win seasons, finish in the top 20 a few years in a row, guess what? Your recruiting is going to continue to improve. And then when you face talented teams, you'll have a better chance of winning those games and starting to log real meaningful victories. I don't think there's any I don't think there's any downside to scheduling a lousy schedule and piling up wins. I think that's a pretty good way to go about it. As for Pitt's offense, look, Mark Whipple can do a better job. I don't think there's any question about it. Pitt's wide receivers and tight ends could do a better job catching the ball. Pitt's offensive players overall could do a better job not turning the ball over. The offensive line could block better. There are a lot of areas to blame. when it comes to Pitt offense over the last 2 seasons. I don't know, it's not just Mark Whipple. And, the quarterback can play better. The running backs obviously can play better. The receivers and tight ends, no doubt about it. And the offensive line could play much, much better than it has. Sometimes it really is about execution. And you need to execute better. Going to the top of the 7th here, Pitt leading 3-2. And yeah, I was right. Pitt will play NC State on Thursday night at 7 o'clock, and then Carolina and NC State play on Friday night. Pitt needs to win both of these games. They need to hold on against North Carolina tonight, and they need to beat NC State on Thursday night. And if they do, they'll win the pool. If they win the pool, they advance to the semifinals on Saturday, which it's a 1-game elimination. Chance to go to the finals on Sunday of the ACC baseball tournament. So we'll see what happens here. But, when it comes to this football team, you got the quarterback, which I think is a huge piece of the puzzle. And, you need the defense, obviously, to pick up where they left off, to some extent, where they left off. But you need the defense to take a step forward. You've got young guys who have potential, and I think we all concur and we all feel, I think rightfully so, that Pitt has recruited well on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, now it's time to show some of that good recruiting. The defense of the last few years was a testament to the recruiting that this staff has done on that side of the ball. This year, they just need to show it again. They need to have recruited well. They need Habakkuk Baldonado and John Morgan to really be the guys that they thought they were. Same thing with the safeties. They need Hallett and Brandon Hill and obviously MJ Devonshire, the transfer they brought in from Kentucky. I mean, those guys need to be ready to play, and they need to be ready to step into some pretty large shoes left by DeMar Hamlin and Paris Ford. You're going to have turnover every year. There are going to be openings you have to fill every year. That's natural part of college football. And the teams that succeed are the ones that have recruited well enough and developed well enough to have guys ready to step into those spots so that the team just keeps moving forward. The schedule is set up for success this year. The roster should be close enough if the coaches have evaluated well, if they've recruited well, and if they've developed well. A lot of that's going to be the offensive line, as we always know, but it's set up for a year where 8 wins minimum, and you got a chance against those really good teams on the schedule to add on to something more than 8. So we'll see. Obviously, we'll be talking about it a lot on Panther-Lair.com. It's Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, baseball, so we keep an eye on the game here. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And, of course, there are message boards where you can talk with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. If you're a Pitt fan, you like talking to other Pitt fans, this is the place to do it, Panther-Lair.com. That's where you can go to get in on those conversations. And, of course, every Tuesday night we have this podcast right here. If you listen to the podcast through the week, very much appreciate you. But you can also check it out right here on Panther-Lair or on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Every Tuesday night, 8:30, we are live. You can jump in on the live chat. You can post your comments and questions like these guys have tonight. We can have a conversation about what you're thinking in Pitt sports. Saturday mornings, we got the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan, 8 a.m. We get an hour of Pitt sports talk on The Fan. We're hoping to be back in a position to take some phone calls sometime soon. And, hopefully have even more conversation and interaction there. But in the meantime, we'll keep talking at you about everything going on in Pitt sports. So thanks to everybody who tuned in here tonight on a Tuesday night. Thanks to everybody listening to the podcast through the week. Make sure you check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. And, have a great rest of the night. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you Saturday with the Panthers Insider Show. And then we'll see you on Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. right here for the Panther-Lair Show. Have a